Wife tried to run away across the country with our child after pretending she got a new job offer but was rejected at the last minute, then went on a rampage, destroying and flooding our house along with the flat we were supposed to start renting out. And when I finally confronted her, she admitted everything before I took our baby and left, but now she's lying to everyone, claiming I kidnapped our child and was the one who trashed our homes after taking doc drugs. Obligatory thank you for reading, and to anyone who takes the time to comment, even if it's harsh. I'm in my early 30s. My wife's in her late 20s. We've been married for a little over 4 years and have a 10-month-old baby. Up until recently, I thought our life was mostly normal. She's always been independent, ambitious, and sharp. She started acting different after the baby was born, restless, withdrawn, always complaining she felt trapped or like her life was slipping away. I chalked it up to postpartum stuff and tried to give her space. I took on most of the nighttime feedings, handled the baby whenever she needed a break, and didn't question her when she said she was unhappy. I figured she just needed time. About 3 weeks ago, she came home all excited saying she got offered a job across the country, supposedly a big promotion with great pay and benefits. She said it was in another city about 8 hours away and that she'd have to move first to start training. She made it sound like a dream opportunity, something she couldn't pass up, and that she'd send for me and the baby once she was settled. I didn't love the idea, but she framed it as something that would help us long term. I told her I'd support her if it was legitimate, and she promised it was. The next few days were tense. She was distant but oddly upbeat, talking about apartments she'd already looked at, the schools in the area, and the weather there. She started boxing things up quietly, telling me it was just preparation. I didn't think too much of it until a few nights before she was supposed to leave. She left her laptop open on the table when she went to the store, and I saw an email notification pop up. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was from the same company she'd said hired her, a rejection email dated more than 2 weeks earlier. My stomach dropped. I scrolled through the chain and saw the full conversation. She'd applied, interviewed twice, and was formally turned down long before she told me she got the job. I didn't know what to think. I waited until she got home and asked her about it. She didn't even try to deny it. She just stared at me like she was exhausted and said she couldn't breathe here anymore, that she needed to get away, that I was controlling, and she couldn't live under my roof. I wasn't yelling or anything, I just asked what she was talking about and why she lied about the job. She started crying, said she deserved a fresh start, and stormed out with the baby before I could stop her. She took her phone and disappeared for the night. I tracked her through our shared account and saw she was at her sister's place about 30 minutes away. I barely slept. I kept checking to make sure the baby was still with her. The next morning, she came back out of nowhere, still furious, saying I'd ruined everything. She kept pacing around, throwing clothes into bags, saying she was leaving anyway. When I told her she couldn't just take the baby and disappear, she lost it completely. She started slamming doors, knocking over shelves, broke a lamp, and at one point turned on the kitchen sink and walked away while screaming. The water overflowed and ran down into the basement. It was like watching someone else. She wasn't even there mentally. I took out my phone and started recording. I didn't know what else to do. The whole time she was yelling about how she had nothing left and how I'd won. After she finally stormed out again, I shut off the water, called a plumber, and took pictures of the mess. The floorboards were soaked, part of the wall was swollen, and there was water damage leaking into the ceiling below. It was bad. I sat there realizing this wasn't just a fight. Something was seriously wrong. I packed a bag, grabbed formula and clothes for the baby, and went to my parents' place that night. I texted her saying I was leaving for safety reasons and that the baby was fine. She didn't reply. About an hour later, she sent a single message. "You'll regret this." Right now, I'm sitting at my parents' kitchen table trying to figure out my next steps. I've already backed up every message and video I have, but I don't even know where to start legally. She hasn't reached out to see the baby, but she's telling everyone that I'm an abusive father who snapped. My mother-in-law called me screaming that I'd taken her grandchild hostage. My wife also texted my sister saying she's talking to the police. I don't know what that means, but I'm not taking chances. I called a lawyer this morning and have an appointment tomorrow. I plan on filing for temporary custody and documenting everything. I know people will tell me to just let her calm down, but I don't think this is something that will blow over. I honestly don't even know who this person is anymore. A month ago, she was planning family trips and talking about starting a small business. Now she's flooding the house, lying about jobs, and saying I'm a danger to our child. It's like she snapped into someone else. If anyone's been through something even remotely similar with a spouse lying to everyone and turning the story around, I could really use advice on what to do next legally. Update 1. First off, thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. I read through every single message, even the ones that told me I needed to toughen up or that I was overreacting. A few people pointed out that what my wife did wasn't just a bad argument or a breakdown, but something that could have turned dangerous if I hadn't acted fast. I needed to hear that. I wish I could say things calmed down after I left with our baby, but they got worse, much worse. The morning after I posted, I got a call from a mutual friend asking if everything was true that I'd taken off with the baby after destroying the house during a breakdown. That was how I found out my wife had gone to the police. She told them I'd taken our child and disappeared after trashing both our home and the small flat we'd been fixing up to rent out. She showed them photos of the damage as proof. Those same photos are now part of the evidence I gave my lawyer because they're the same rooms she wrecked herself while I was recording quietly from the corner, terrified she'd hurt herself or the baby. My lawyer told me to hold on to everything, not to post anything online or argue with anyone, just to let the evidence speak for itself. She'd been telling people I was on drugs too. Apparently, that's part of her story that I snapped after using something. I've never even touched anything stronger than a beer. But people love drama, and once those words were out there, they spread fast. Her family ate it up immediately. Her mother left me multiple voicemails calling me a monster and saying she was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of father I was. My parents were already aware of everything that happened. I'd shown them the videos, texts, and pictures before the story started circulating. They're not the emotional type, but my dad looked sick when I showed him the damage. My mom kept saying that something wasn't right with my wife mentally, that it was like she'd snapped and was rewriting reality. They told me to stay calm and keep things strictly legal from that point on. I met with a family lawyer the next day and filed for temporary custody. The lawyer didn't even hesitate. As soon as I told her about the flooding, the attempted move across the country under false pretenses, and now the police report against me, she said this was more than just a marital dispute. It was a case of potential parental abduction and property destruction. She also told me that my wife's police report could backfire badly once the evidence came out. That same evening, I got a call from the officer handling the report. He wanted my side of the story. I gave it to him straight. I said I had videos, timestamps, and proof that she'd fabricated her story. I didn't get into emotional details, just the facts. I emailed over everything before the call ended. The next morning, the officer confirmed he'd received it and that an investigation was being opened on both claims, hers against me and mine against her. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from our property manager about the flat we were getting ready to rent. He said the place was a disaster and asked if I knew what happened. My heart sank before I even got there. The front door frame was splintered like someone had kicked it in. Walls had holes, the bathroom sink had been cracked in half, and the floors were soaked again. It looked like someone had just gone room to room breaking things out of spite. The manager said he saw her there late that night, parking out front, and assumed we were doing late repairs. I sent photos to my lawyer and she added them to the growing list of evidence. Between the house and the flat, the damage is easily in the thousands. I know some people will say she must have been having a breakdown, and maybe she was, but that doesn't change the fact that she's trying to frame me for it. She kept messaging me through random numbers, saying I stole her baby, that I'd regret what I'd done, that I ruined her life. I didn't respond to any of it. Every single message went straight into a folder my lawyer told me to keep. She said this kind of thing can become harassment, and it's best to document everything instead of reacting emotionally. Meanwhile, I've been staying at my parents' house. My mom's been helping with the baby, and I've been trying to keep some kind of routine feeding, nap times, bedtime, all of it. My wife hasn't even asked to see the baby since she filed her report. She's more focused on making me look like a villain. That's what stings the most. She knows exactly what she's doing, telling just enough truth to make the lies sound believable. Her sister reached out once. She said I was being cruel and that my wife was scared for her life. I told her I had video proof of what actually happened, and I was done explaining myself to people who already decided I was guilty. She blocked me right after that. The police have been surprisingly reasonable since I gave them my evidence. They told me not to worry about any arrest or custody issue for now because everything she accused me of contradicts what's on video. Still, the stress is constant. I can't shake the feeling that she's planning another move. I don't want to believe the person I married would ever go this far, but every day proves otherwise. She didn't just lie, she built an entire story where she's the victim, and I'm some unhinged father who lost control. It's like she's trying to erase the truth before anyone can question her version. Update 2. Thanks again for all the support on my last post. I read through as much as I could, and honestly, the advice about documenting everything saved me. So after filing the police reports and getting the temporary custody paperwork moving, things were quiet for maybe a week. I thought she was laying low. Then I got a call from HR at my job. They said they'd received an anonymous email claiming I had a substance abuse problem and that I'd shown up to work high multiple times. They were required to investigate. I knew exactly who it was before they even said anything. I've never touched drugs in my life. I work in a technical field where even one false report can tank your career, so this hit me hard. I told HR right away what was going on with my wife. I didn't give them all the messy details, just that there was a custody dispute and she was making false claims. I offered to take a drug test that same day, and they agreed. I took one through an independent lab and emailed them the results completely clean. HR cleared me, but they still put me on temporary leave for a week while they wrapped up their internal investigation. I didn't argue it. I needed the time to deal with everything else anyway, but it still humiliated me. Not even a day later, I got a knock on my door. It was Child Services. They said they'd gotten an anonymous report about child endangerment, specifically that my baby was living in unsafe conditions with a father under the influence of drugs. I can't even describe the feeling. I invited them in, showed them every room, the baby's crib, the formula, everything. I gave them copies of the police report, the timestamps from the damage she caused, and the negative drug test I'd literally just taken. They were polite but professional. After the visit, they said they didn't see any cause for concern and would close the file pending verification of the documents. I remember just sitting on the couch after they left, shaking. It's one thing to deal with property damage or lies to family. It's another when someone tries to weaponize your own child against you. Her family has gone quiet since the police started following up on the property damage. Her sister, who was the loudest online about me kidnapping the baby, stopped posting anything once she realized the investigation was real. I found out from a mutual acquaintance that her sister's boyfriend works in property maintenance, and that he's the one who gave my wife the spare key to the rental property. That's how she got in to wreck the place. I told the police, and they were very interested in that detail. They said it suggested premeditation, not just an emotional outburst. The property manager has been really decent through all this. He's seen the evidence and confirmed to the police that she was the one who did the damage. Between the flooding and what she did to the rental unit, it's over $20,000 worth of repairs. The insurance is still processing it, but even if it gets covered, it's going to stick on her record. I'm also talking to a lawyer about pushing for a more formal custody arrangement, at least temporarily. Right now, everything's based on emergency filings, but once the custody hearing starts, I want something solid in place. My lawyer says with the kind of documentation I've got, the property damage, the police reports, the drug test, the child services clearance, I have a strong case. He advised me to keep all communication with her through official channels or lawyers only, which I've been following religiously. I've got a custody hearing scheduled in a few weeks. That's where everything's going to come to a head. I don't know what she'll try next, but I'm documenting everything, keeping my distance, and making sure my son is safe. Update 3. It's been a while since my last update. The investigation into the house and the rental property came back, and both were confirmed as deliberate damage. Between my videos, timestamps, and the neighbor's statements about her screaming that night, there wasn't really any way for her to talk her way out of it. I didn't even feel relief when I got the call from the officer, just this weird, empty feeling. I think part of me was still hoping that it was somehow a misunderstanding, even after everything she's done. But the photos, the water damage reports, all of it made it clear it was intentional. She did that. After that, her story started to fall apart quickly. People who had been taking her side, mostly her family, and a few of our mutual friends started backing off. I think the reality of what she'd done was too hard to defend once the police reports became public. Her mother called me one evening, crying and saying she didn't know what to believe anymore. I didn't say much back. I've learned it's better not to try explaining myself anymore. I have the evidence. I've said what happened, and if someone still wants to believe I'm some unstable guy who kidnapped his own kid, that's on them. Her lawyer reached out after that to try and work out a private arrangement. Basically, they wanted me to drop the criminal charges if she agreed to joint custody. My lawyer told me it was just a desperation move. She knows what's coming and is trying to look like she's being reasonable. I turned it down immediately. I'm not doing this for revenge, and I'm not going to let my son grow up in chaos just because she's scared of facing consequences. Around this time, she started sending me these strange emotional emails. One day she'd be begging for forgiveness and promising to get help. The next she'd accuse me of destroying her life. It got to the point where I had to block her on everything except a monitored email my lawyer keeps for custody-related communication. I know some people think that's cold, but after what's happened, I can't risk any contact that isn't documented. Every interaction with her somehow gets twisted into something it wasn't. She also started showing up outside my new apartment. I don't even know how she found the address I moved for safety reasons and only told a few people. The first time I saw her, she was just sitting in her car with the lights off. I called the police and they came out, told her to leave, and warned her about violating the restraining order. She left without much of a scene, but a week later, she was back again. I took another video and sent it straight to my lawyer. That was enough for another report. Since then, she's been keeping her distance, though she's still posting online about mental health struggles and vague comments about being betrayed by someone she trusted. I don't reply or say anything. I just save the posts in case I ever need them. The custody hearing was last week, and I don't think I'll ever forget how it went. It was brutal, and it's one thing to know the truth, but it's another to sit in a room and have your entire life laid out like that. My lawyer went through everything, and her side tried to spin it like she'd had a mental health crisis brought on by my controlling behavior. I just sat there quietly and let the evidence speak for itself. When they showed the video of her smashing the mirror and flooding the bathroom, she completely broke down. She started crying, couldn't even get through her testimony, and eventually the judge had to call a recess. It was the first time I think I've seen her realize she wasn't going to talk her way out of this. When court resumed, the judge ruled for supervised visitation only, along with a mandatory psychiatric evaluation. My lawyer said it's as good of an outcome as we could have hoped for. She'll only see our son through an approved visitation center until further notice, and even then, she'll have to go through therapy and psychiatric review before any changes are made. It's what I wanted, but I can't say I felt good about it. Watching the mother of your child fall apart like that isn't satisfying, it's just sad. After the hearing, I sat in my car for about an hour before driving home. I kept looking at the photo of our son I keep on my dashboard and wondering how it got to this point. I still remember when she told me she was pregnant and how happy she was. It feels like that person doesn't exist anymore. The woman who tried to run off with him, who lied about a job, who destroyed our homes and then called me a kidnapper. I don't even recognize her. I keep replaying things in my head, trying to find the moment where everything went off the rails. Maybe it started after the baby was born and she felt trapped. Maybe it was always there and I just didn't see it. Final update. I was granted full custody, with her getting supervised visitation twice a month through a center that handles those cases. The judge also put a long-term restraining order in place and made it clear that any harassment, online or otherwise, would count as a violation. She's been mostly quiet since then, at least directly. I've heard bits and pieces through people who still have her on social media, but I don't check myself anymore. I'm done feeding into whatever narrative she's trying to keep alive. The psychiatric evaluation confirmed what a lot of professionals had suspected. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and severe depression. I guess that explains a lot, but it doesn't excuse the things she did. She's in mandatory therapy as part of her visitation terms, and she's supposed to provide progress updates every few months to the court. Her lawyer asked if I'd ever consider shared custody again if she stabilizes, but I told him I wasn't going to make any promises. My main concern is my son's safety, not trying to fix something that's already beyond repair. She ended up losing her job not long after everything came out. Apparently, HR got wind of the fact that she filed false complaints about me using drugs and had been under investigation for harassment. Her family hasn't said much publicly, but her mother reached out once through my lawyer to apologize for the things they said early on. She admitted they believed her version of events because she'd always been the more emotional one, and it was easier to assume I was the problem. I didn't respond to that message, but I appreciated it all the same. I don't have the energy for more contact with them. The damage to the house and rental flat ended up being worse than I thought. Insurance covered most of it, but there was still a good amount I had to pay out of pocket. The repairs are finally done now, and I sold the rental because I didn't want that hanging over me anymore. I'm staying in a smaller apartment for the time being while I save up to move somewhere new. It's quiet, clean, and feels like a reset, which is all I really want right now. My son's doing well. He's too young to understand much, but he's been adjusting better than I expected. He doesn't talk about his mother often, but when he does, it's in short bursts, like he's trying to process things at his own pace. The visitation center told me that their sessions have been going smoothly so far, short and structured, with supervisors present at all times. I'm grateful for that setup because I don't trust her on her own yet. Even with the therapy, I still get this pit in my stomach every time her name shows up in my email for court updates or reports, but I guess that's something that'll fade over time. And there's still a part of me that remembers who she was before all this, before the lies, before the destruction, before she tried to turn my life into a circus. We had good years, and I don't think those memories are fake, just buried under everything that came after. I used to think maybe she'd hit rock bottom and start taking accountability, but even now, her idea of moving on seems to involve painting herself as the victim. I can't control that, and honestly, I don't care to anymore.